All right, good morning, ladies and gents. Today we are going to be making pasta, and more specifically, we're going to be making ravioli and agnolotti. Now, while you can make any filling to go with this, today we're just going to go with a very simple spinach and ricotta and Parmesan cheese filling. And then once we make our pasta, we are going to serve that in a garlic cream sauce with some marinated tomatoes. Has a lot of technique, really simple to make, really delicious. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, the main focus in this recipe is the fresh pasta that we're going to make. Now, fresh pasta is really simple to make. It's really fun to eat. It cooks very, very quickly. And basic terms, it's just flour and then eggs. More egg yolks tends to make a richer, softer pasta, whereas more whole eggs tends to make a firmer pasta that has a little bit more of a bite to it. Since I'm going to be using this in a stuffed pasta, I'm using some more egg yolks compared to whole eggs, but again, does not matter too much. You'll still get a good end product. And to make this, it's really simple. I'm just going to make a well in the center of the flour, and then I'm going to add in the eggs. From here, I'm just going to kind of whisk this together until a rough dough forms. Then I will transfer this onto the counter. At first, the pasta dough is going to be very, very dry and crumbly. That's okay. Just continue to knead it, form that gluten in the dough, and should be able to come roughly together. Kind of relax, enjoy feeling the dough as it changes and kneads in your hand. All right, from here, I'm just going to take my plastic wrap, and I'm just going to wrap the dough, and I'm just going to put it into the fridge for about 20-30 minutes or so. Now, if you work in a professional restaurant, if you have a vacuum chamber sealer, you can put this dough in there and vacuum seal it, and then the dough will actually be ready almost instantly. So it might save you a little bit of time. For me, since I do not have that, this is just going in the fridge for about 20 to 30 minutes. All right, now we are going to be making the spinach ricotta filling. So in a saute pan, I'm going to add in a bit of light olive oil into the pan, and then I'm going to add a couple cloves worth of minced garlic. It shouldn't sizzle too loudly. I'm also going to add a good bit of brunoise of shallot, and then a good pinch of kosher salt for seasoning and to draw out some of the moisture in there. I'm going to turn that on about medium heat, and I'm just going to sweat this down lightly until the garlic and shallots soften a bit. All right, now that my garlic and shallots are nice and softened, I'm going to add in my spinach. Now, this looks like a lot of spinach, and if you're eating this as a salad, yes, it would be a lot. However, as we apply heat to the spinach leaves, their cell structure is going to kind of break down a bit, and you're going to see all this spinach is going to kind of shrink down and wilt down to a very small amount. At this stage, I'm just going to add a little bit more seasoning. I'm going to add a little bit of black pepper, and one thing flavor that goes really nicely with spinach is a little grating of nutmeg, just right over the top, just a little bit. And then I'm just going to continue to cook this down until it's nice and wilted. All right, you can see how much the spinach has wilted down by. At this stage, I'm just looking to see how much water is left in the pan. I'm just going to look at the bottom of the pan and see if there's a lot of liquid or water that's just kind of bubbling, because I don't want that water to end up in the ricotta filling. But this is looking pretty good. I'm probably just going to saute for another like 30 seconds or so, and then I will put that into my strainer before I then chop it up. At this stage, I'm just going to put the spinach into my strainer. I'm going to let that cool down just for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to go on to my next step. Now in here, I've got my ricotta cheese. Now what I've done with the spinach is I've just put it on a cutting board and just rough chopped it. If your spinach is still a little too wet, you can just take a paper towel and just kind of blot it dry. But this is good, so I'm just going to add this to the bowl along with the Parmesan cheese. Add in about half of a lemon's worth of zest. One piece of advice here, instead of trying to zest the lemon this way where you have to grate and then stop and look and then grate and then stop and look, try to hold the zester this way, so as you kind of run the zester down the lemon, you can continuously see what you're zesting And not to mention, you can go a lot quicker. Not to mention all the zest just collects right in the zester itself, and then you can just add that right to the bowl. I'm just gonna stir this together, and there's my filling. Now, really important that you taste it and adjust seasoning. So for me, definitely needs a good bit more salt and pepper. Also, don't be afraid to add some extra acidity in the form of either vinegar, or in my case, I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon juice. Remember, if you taste something and it tastes salty enough, but it's missing a little something, chances are that little something is some acid. I'm just gonna park this in the fridge for a little bit. I want this to be completely chilled before I go to put it inside the pasta. All right, so let's talk pasta rollers. This is an automatic one that attaches to a KitchenAid mixer, but regardless of whether you use this one or a hand crank one, they all work pretty similarly. On one end, you have the dial here that has numbers or thickness levels to it, and as you go up the numbers, the thinner the pasta will become. All right, so now we're going to roll out the pasta dough. Now, I'm gonna unwrap my pasta. I do have a little bit of flour here just in case, but I think this dough being so dry that I'm not going to need it. I'm gonna cut the dough in half here, and then I'm gonna wrap up the remaining and put that back in the fridge. All right, from here, I'm going to flatten out the dough, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have the roller on its thickest setting. So I'm gonna run this through once, I'm gonna run it through, I'm going to fold it into thirds, laminating the dough, and then what I'm going to do is I'm gonna do that a couple of times, and then I'm going to then slowly start to roll the pasta out thinner and thinner until I have it the thickness that I want for the raviolis. I'm gonna turn on the mixer, and I'm gonna run the pasta through. Now, at first it may be really ugly. That's okay. I'm just gonna fold it in half and run it through again. So I'm then gonna fold the dough in half again and run it through. See, it's looking a little less ugly each time, so I'm gonna fold in half once again. So I'm going to crank down the thickness by 1 to setting 2, and I'm gonna do the same thing. Now, I'm not going to fold in half now. I'm going to set it to 3. And I'm just going to continue going down the thickness levels. And dough should be almost see-through, but not quite that much. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And there we have our pasta dough. And you can see the thinness level. You can see my fingers through the dough, but it's not so thin that I'm worried that this is going to break or tear. This is perfect. Now for my mixer, that was setting number 8, which is the thinnest setting, but for yours it might be a little bit different. You just kind of have to play around with it with your mixer. All right, at this stage, we gotta work fairly quickly since the pasta will dry out if we wait too long. I've got my filling in a piping bag. I'm just gonna clip the tip and have that put to the side ready to go. I'm going to take my pasta sheet and I'm gonna pipe on a bit of filling, making sure to stay nice and neat and nice and clean. So I'm gonna spoon about a tablespoon or so. From here, I'm going to take a little bit of egg wash and just kind of brush that in between the pieces here. Very lightly, though. And what this is going to do is this is going to just kind of seal the pasta itself. I'm then going to fold the pasta over. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to force the air out of the pasta by just kind of pinching my fingers around the filling. So to get kind of a closer view of that, there's the pocket of filling. I'm going to press my hands on either side of it, and I'm going to just kind of push the air out of the filling so that only the spinach filling is inside the ravioli. If you have a bunch of air pockets in the filling, then, or in the ravioli I should say, then what's gonna happen is that air is gonna expand when you put it into the pan and the ravioli is gonna kind of explode. So we don't want that. All right, from here, then you're just gonna cut into the individual raviolis. Now you can just use a pizza cutter. I'm going to use a fluted pastry cutter just to kind of make it a little bit more attractive looking. And I'll just kind of trim the pieces. Okay, from here, I'm just gonna go around the ravioli and just kind of pinch this tightly closed. Because remember, the pasta on the edges here is double the thickness as what's in the inside here. So I really want to make sure to pinch that closed, or pinch that very, very thin, so that the ravioli will cook evenly. So I'm going to do that with all these, and then I'll get these onto a tray. And once I have them all ready to go, I'm just going to put them on a tray, dust it with a little bit of flour. Now from here, you can cook them right away. You can refrigerate them for a couple of hours, but to really keep their quality, you really want to tightly cover this and then put these in the freezer. Now, these will keep their quality for about a week or two. What you may find is that the pasta itself may crack in the freezer, so that freezer option is not a super long-term storage, but it definitely can work. Now, the next shape I'm going to show you is round raviolis. Now, round raviolis are fine. The only problem with them is that they tend to waste more pasta than, say, the square ones, but they still are a really nice shape. Also, this can be the basis for a tortellini. I'm not going to show you that for you today, but it's still in some nice shapes that you can play with. All right. For each one of these, I am going to just take a little bit of filling, and I'm just going to fill the center. Now I'm going to fill 3 of them here. I'm then going to take a finger, I'm just going to brush the outside of the pasta with a little bit of egg wash here. And then, similar to the square ravioli, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my second piece and I'm just going to put it over the top, and I'm going to just pinch down on each side like so. Then I'm going to pick up the ravioli and I'm just going to kind of pinch this closed while, again, trying to force the air out of the pasta. If a little bit of filling comes out like that, that is okay, just as long as I make sure it's sealed closed. And again, just like the other ravioli, you want to kind of keep in mind the outside layer of pasta is double the thickness of the inside layer. So again, make sure you pinch it shut. So now I'm going to show you how to make agnolotti, which is a really cool shape. It's a little more complicated, but still really cool. I rolled out my other half of the dough. I'm going to make my agnolotti with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down the dough and just pipe one long line of filling down the dough. I want to do it about 1/3 up the way down the dough, so not down the middle, but you can see it's a little off center, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to just brush a little bit of egg wash just above the filling to act as the seal for this, or as the glue, I should say. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the dough up and over, and I'm not going to tuck the dough underneath itself. I'm just going to kind of seal the filling in. I'm just going to go all the way down the dough. Now I'm going to make sure to press really tightly here to make sure to seal the pasta. And this is what you should end up with. So you can see I actually have quite a bit of room from the end of the filling to the end of the dough. And you can see all the pasta is tucked around the filling here. And again, on the other end, I have a good bit of space here. I'm going to show you why I would do that here in a second. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to seal the end of the filling here, and then I'm going to take about 2 fingers length for me, and I'm just going to put my fingers on 2 sides of the dough like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand the dough up just slightly, and I'm going to squeeze the 2 together. So I have a bit of the dough with its filling kind of standing up like this. Go down to the end, and I'm going to go right next door, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to kind of pinch and then just kind of make sure the filling stays in. I don't want to use too much of my nails to break the dough here, so I'm using more of the pads of my fingers, and I'm just going to do that. I'm going to go down, squeeze, pinch, so I get these little ridges here. So this is what it should look like as you go down the pasta. So you have the individual little portions here ready to cut. Now from here, I'm just going to trim on the top of the dough with my fluted cutter. And I want to make sure to leave a good bit of space here so that when I cut, the dough can roll and seal close. So I'm just gonna go down the pasta here. I'm gonna start here, even though you should start at the end. And I'm just going to take my fluid cutter and just in one confident stroke, just cut it. And I'm just going to go in between all of the pieces of filling here. And I'm just gonna go down the line and just cut the individual agnolottis. So if you've done it right, you should see it almost looks like this little pouch here. So what I'm going to do is, just like the ravioli, I'm gonna pinch the edges shut to get them really thin. And as I do so, I'm gonna work from the top down, and you'll see kind of the pasta almost kind of puff up a little bit, get a little bit fatter. And I'm then going to just kind of press down on the counter here, and the pasta should stand up on its own. So I end up with a dumpling that has a little flat surface on the bottom and then little wings on the side. And I'm gonna do that with all of my pasta here until I've got all my agnolotti ready to go. And there we have it. These are our 3 types of stuffed pastas. It doesn't matter which you go with, they're all really amazing. The agnolotti is cool because the way that it's shaped is that when you put it into the water, it actually kind of self-seals, so you worry a little bit less about the filling running out. But all 3 of these are amazing. So let's go ahead and finish them up. So the sauce is super simple. You're just going to add in butter and cream. You're going to put that on about medium heat, and you're going to just continue to stir that fairly often until the butter melts, the cream is up to a simmer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the heat to low, add in a little bit of nutmeg, add in my Parmesan cheese, and then once that is melted in, I'm just going to add a couple cloves of minced garlic. Then I'm just going to wait, turn off the heat, taste it, just kind of check its final consistency, make any adjustments if I need to, and that's pretty much it. It's a really easy version of an Alfredo that we usually associate here in the United States, but it's really, really good. All right, so now we've got our sauce ready. We've got our pot of salted boiling water ready to go. Now, cooking fresh pasta is a little bit different than dried pasta. First is that for stuffed fresh pastas, you don't want the water at a full violent boil. You want it bubbling, but you don't want it violently boiling. Otherwise, then the pasta just gets completely blown apart. Secondly, fresh pasta cooks way quicker than dried pasta. So this is only gonna take about a minute or 2. So I'm gonna set a timer for 2 minutes. I'm gonna stir gently every now and again, and then I'm going to transfer it directly into my sauce. So I'm gonna cook the ravioli here. I'm just gonna drop that into the water here. And almost as soon as that goes into the water, it's super important that I stir the water just gently to keep it from sticking to the pot. All right, after about 2 minutes, I'm gonna transfer the pasta directly into the sauce. I'm not gonna drain it fully, okay? So just gonna shake a little bit of the excess water, but it goes right in. Okay, what that excess pasta water does is the starch in the pasta water actually helps thicken the sauce and helps emulsify it. The pasta is ready to go and ready to serve. Now I'm going to cook my agnolotti as well, and I'm going to serve that on a completely separate plate. From here, I'm just going to plate this up. You can see one plate already has the ravioli with the tomatoes on it. Now, in a bowl, I've already cut some cherry tomatoes in half and just tossed it with a little bit of olive oil, some red wine vinegar, a tiny bit of fish sauce, and then just some parsley and minced garlic. Tiny bit of minced parsley, and of course what's always nice over fresh pasta is a grating of fresh Parmesan. And there we have it. We have our 2 pastas. We have ravioli on your right and agnolotti on your left, both phenomenal. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below, and I will see you next time.